reality is our friend. And this actually happened to be a theme of a conference that the ministers had in Texas back in the fall, and talking about the reality of life. And so I want to touch on that today because I want to take a look at what is the basis and the focus of your reality. And I'm going to use, when I say your, I mean our reality. What is the basis? And what is real in the present as well as what is humanly discernible in terms of reality. Because when we look at, I looked at reality this morning in the paper, and people are killing one another. There's all kinds of problems going on all over the place. There are difficulties that we find, and you look at the reality of the wars, rumors of war that are going on, people who are feeling very helpless and feeling very, very hopeless as well. And also we look at the reality of what is scientifically provable and what is acceptable and rational. Because there's something about reality sometimes that we may not realize is that somebody's perception of reality may not be really acceptable. They're in a form of denial of the realities that are around them. So if I were to look around this congregation, I could take into view certain realities. And there are certain realities in our physical present world. The reality of how old we are, or how young we are, how many that we are. The realities of where we live, what is possibly even our finances, the reality of our financial status, the reality of our relationships. Those are realities, and they fluctuate with us from time to time. But the question for us today is, does our reality scare us or encourage us? Does it scare us or encourage us? Because the reality is, we are all going to die. That's the reality. And the reality is that come April the 15th, we're either going to get a tax return or we're going to pay taxes, but the reality is we're also paying taxes, even though we may not be actually sending a check to the IRS or whatever. We are all paying taxes. Those are some realities. When we look again at our world and we look at those realities, we have to ask ourselves another question. Is reality totally dependent upon us? Is it totally dependent upon us? And is our reality instructional or delusional? Our reality, for example, when you look in the mirror this morning, what did you see? What did you think? And even as you look in the mirror in your imagination right now, what do you see and what do you think? Well, the Apostle Paul had some things to say about this, about the reality and the way in which he looked at reality, and how that he would have us all look at reality. Now you say, well, that's Paul's idea of reality. But again, our reality isn't just dependent upon ourselves. When we think about reality, it is important oftentimes that we bounce our ideas and thoughts off of other individuals. Because left to ourselves, it's amazing how we can begin to think. And as we think, how we begin to do certain things. So we want to take a look at 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 18 through 31 today. And this is what Paul says in his writings to the church at Corinth. For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God, for it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, the intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. Where is the wise man, and where is the scholar? Where is the philosopher of this age? Has not God made the foolish the wisdom of the world? For since the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not know him, God was pleased through the foolishness of what was preached to save those who believe. And then he's talking about different cultures and aspects in terms of realities. And he says, the Jews demand miraculous signs and the Greeks look for wisdom. But we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to the Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. But to those to whom God has called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than man's wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than man's strength. Brothers, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were influential. Not many were noble birth. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He chose the low things of the world and the despised things and the things that are not, to nullify the things that are, so that no man may boast before him. It is because of him that you are in Christ Jesus, who has become for us wisdom from God. That is, our righteousness, holiness, and redemption. Therefore it is written, let him who boasts, boast in the Lord. Now we want to take this apart today and to begin to take a look at what the Apostle Paul is telling them about reality, because he speaks of his perspective of reality. So, let me kind of bottom line this for us, so we kind of know where we're going. There's no hold barred here. A lot of you sitting here today think the reality is we're just a few in number. We're a dying church. A lot of people think that. A lot of people feel less encouraged. They feel like the reality is, if God were working in us, this would happen. And a lot of people in reality are scared half to death because of what is going on in the world, whether it be ISIS, there be the situation there, whether it be the financial crisis that Greece is having with the euro, whether it be the threats of people, whether it be just our own living environment. And we're scared by what may happen to us. And we may be scared by the reality of our health and thinking, how long will I live and what will happen to me? There may be a lot of people in their realities are very, very scared in their realities, and they're concerned about life. Now contrast that to the thinking of what Jesus gives to us, or through the Apostle Paul in his thinking. Paul is, in contrast, says here in verse 18 of 1 Corinthians 1, he says, for the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to those of us who are saved, it is the power of God. Here's what Paul is saying. Paul's battling wisdom. What wisdom? The realities of the world. If you want to get ahead, this is what you must do. The reality of the world is, for example, our own personal realities, whether it be financial, whether it be spiritual, whether it be those realities, Paul struggled with the wisdom of mankind. We have men against women, youth against old. We have the realities that people just face in their difficulties. And when then Paul says a man who was encompassed by the world, and basically he is kind of showing that the world, he gives that Jews and Greeks. For the Jews, he was encompassed, by Jews, and he was saying to them, they need a sign. In order for it to be real, you need a sign. Now, in a lot of people's world today, they need signs in order for it to be real. Show me. Prove it to me. And then we say, we'll believe. And I would suggest to you the reality is that's not true. Even when it is shown, you will not believe. Not fully believe, because of our lack of being able to believe in something that is greater than just the things that we see, because we want to see the physical. So when Paul is looking at the reality, he makes an incredible statement in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. If all we have, if all that you and I have is our present reality, what should we do? What did Paul say that he would do? Well, in 1 Corinthians 15, in verse 32, here's what Paul says that we should do. Here's a man who fought the good fight. He had struggled through all kinds of difficulties. And he says in verse 32 of 1 Corinthians 15, if I have fought wild beasts at Ephesus for merely human reasons, my own human realities, as it were, what have I gained? If the dead are not raised, then he says, let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. if that's the reality. And unfortunately, in our existential world where people just think, well, it's just about the here and now, nothing beyond that, let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die.
Feeling the blues today, or tired of life already? Do you have questions about life, or need spiritual advice? The Worldwide Church of God is located in Fairfield, Santa Rosa, and Modesto, California. We welcome everyone to attend our worship services with us every week at the times listed on your screen.